Harry Hynes Memorial Hospice is celebrating 40 years of serving patients and families in Kansas. 40 years ago, we started hospice care. We were the first people to start hospice care, and it was started by a group of volunteers. 1983, 40 years ago. Where were you? In 1983, milk was $2.24 a gallon, eggs were 86 cents a dozen, gas was $1.24 a gallon, and a postage stamp only cost 20 cents. In 1983, I was in grade school. This is a picture of me in second grade. While I was in second grade, we had a group of volunteers that had been working for 2 years to bring hospice to Kansas. This group of volunteers was led by Dr. Harry Hynes, who was a prominent oncologist in the Wichita area. Over my years with the agency, I've met many people who knew Dr. Harry Hynes, and they always said that he was very caring as a caregiver, but also as a person. He saw the need for something to take care of his patients when they've reached the end of their cancer treatment journey. And so he gathered a group of volunteers to begin to decide what this could look like in Kansas. If you look at the back row on the left in the dark suit, that's Father Tom Welk. And he was one of our very first volunteers, a founding member of what became Harry Hynes Memorial Hospice, and is still on our staff today. He is a leader on our staff and a joy to all he meets. And we have learned from him that hospice is more about living than it is about dying. Our very first nurse, her name was Pat Castens, and to this day she serves as a Comfort Crossing volunteer. We have Comfort Crossing volunteers that will go and sit with patients in the final hours of their life because we believe that no one should die alone. And Pat Castens, although she is a retired nurse, loves to serve as a Comfort Crossing volunteer and will drop a hat any moment to go and sit with a patient who is in need of someone to be with them in their final days. In 2002, what was different names, because we merged with several hospices in the Kansas area, fully rebranded as Harry Hynes Memorial Hospice in honor of Dr. Harry Hynes. He had passed away 2 years earlier in the year 2000, and it seemed fitting to name our organization after such an incredible leader who was the one who brought hospice to Kansas. When hospice was brought to Kansas, it was not paid for by Medicare. Our group of volunteers worked for a year before it was ever certified to get Medicare payments. So in 1984, we were the very first hospice in Kansas that were certified by the Medicare hospice benefit. In 2004, we opened our inpatient unit at Via Christi St. Francis. And when people hear Harry Hynes Memorial Hospice in the general public, a lot of them think that this is the big portion of our agency, but actually it's just a tiny percent of the patients that we serve here at Harry Hynes Memorial Hospice. But our inpatient unit is a very special place, and I want to share with you a little bit about what makes it so special. Our inpatient unit is not a hospice house. It's not a place for people to stay long term. It's designed for short stays, 3 to 5 days, for a patient that is going to be imminently passing away or someone who's having an acute pain crisis, and we need to bring them in for higher level care to get their pain under control before we can move them to what will be their home for their final days. Our nurses and aides, when a patient comes to our inpatient unit, the first thing they do is they bathe the patient. They wash their hair and they put them in a special gown that is sewn by an incredible group of volunteers. This gown looks more like regular pajamas, but still has the access that our nurses need to be able to treat this patient properly. It's a piece of giving them a little bit of dignity at the end of their life. And when a family member comes and visits their loved one in our inpatient unit, and sees that they have clean hair, or the man's been shaved and they're wearing pajamas that look like normal pajamas, it's a piece of letting them know that their loved one is an incredible person that we are going to care for in our unit. Our unit has a convertible bed where a loved one can stay the night. We have 24/7 visiting hours, and it is a place where patients can receive 24/7 care, get their pain under control, or pass away peacefully in a place that's a lot less sterile than a hospital. Hospitals are not usually a place to receive a lot of rest, and so our inpatient unit is more of a place where a patient can come and receive rest. Just like our inpatient unit has a little bit of misunderstandings, there's a lot of misunderstandings about hospice in general. Hospice is designed to not be just a few days. Hospice at its best is a 6-month-long journey with our nurse case manager, the patient, our chaplain, and our social worker, where we build long-term relationships with patients and families, caring for them. It is a known statistic that patients that go on hospice sooner often live longer. And I was just reading an article a few weeks ago about President Jimmy Carter. He has been on hospice for over 7 months. And that is usually more like what a typical hospice stay should be like. Hospice isn't meant to be just the final days. It's not about dying. It's about living the end of your life well. And when you choose hospice sooner, you have the opportunity to really live in those last days of your life, last months of your life. But sometimes patients aren't quite ready for hospice. Maybe they're still seeking some aggressive curative treatment. So in 2019, our agency created a sister company called Bridges Palliative Care. Bridges Palliative Care is designed to help patients that are going to be needing a little bit of comfort care. They're needing some pain management, but they're still seeking treatment for their disease. A lot of these patients may still be on dialysis or receiving treatment for their congestive heart failure or COPD, and they're having pain that needs to be managed, but they're still seeking treatment. Our Bridges team will come out and make house calls and help these patients in their journey towards eventually needing hospice. And that's why it's a bridge from needing aggressive curative treatment to eventually moving over to proper hospice care, where you can have that long-term relationship with your caregiving team. But what's even more important about Harry Hynes Memorial Hospice is that we're a nonprofit. We're the only nonprofit here in Wichita, nonprofit hospice, and we believe in taking care of patients regardless of their payer source. Most patients that are in hospice are over 65 and they have Medicare or they might have Medicaid, and that has a hospice benefit that they can get their hospice paid for. But every once in a while there's a patient who doesn't fit that mold. I was talking with a patient in his late 50s a few months ago, and he was the breadwinner for the family. The family had their health insurance through his job, but his cancer treatment and his cancer process got to where he could no longer work his job. So the family moved over to COBRA, and they were reaching the end of their COBRA benefit, and the patient was realizing that it was no longer time to be seeking curative treatment, and he was ready to start seeking comfort treatment. But he was nervous about how they were going to pay for that. And I was able to sit with him and his wife and say, it's not about the payment with Harry Hynes Hospice. We'll do a small financial assessment, do a sliding fee scale, and if they can't pay, we're never going to send a patient to collections, because we believe that hospice care is too important to worry about how a patient can pay for it or not. Another thing that makes Harry Hynes Hospice unique is that we'll take care of pediatric patients. We wrap around our staff and give them extra support when they're dealing with a pediatric patient, because it is harder and it is different than taking care of patients that are in their 70s, 80s, 90s, or even their hundreds. When you're dealing with a pediatric patient, it is an honor to serve them and serve their family, but we also make sure that our staff is taken care of when they are serving patients. I am on a mission to teach people that hospice is not about dying, but it's about living the end of your life well. And as I close today, I would like to invite you to join me in that mission. Share with your friends, your family, your clients that hospice isn't meant to be short-term. It's meant to be a long-term relationship. Choosing hospice sooner has better outcomes for the patient and their family. They definitely have more comfort as they choose to live the end of their life well. Hospice is not about dying. It's about living the end of your life well. And here at Harry Hynes Memorial Hospice, we have 40 years experience walking alongside patients and families as they live the last of their life well. Thanks so much.